thank all of you for delaying your lunch to come and see this. We're glad to be able to have an opportunity to tell you about our trip to Papua New Guinea to visit the Grimms and to see the work that they're doing there. And we hope that you'll find this interesting. One of the things about this presentation is I'm not able to see what's on the screen in back of you, so I'm going to have to be kind of looking as well. Both Shelli and I are going to have to do that, so hopefully that's not too disturbing. So this is where we start, Papua New Guinea, beautiful and brutal. When people ask us how your trip went, this is the thing that came out of our mouths the most. It was beautiful and it was brutal. This is Papua New Guinea's national flag, and just a little information there. The star constellation on the bottom left-hand side is the Southern Cross, which you can see kind of in the background there. And the part on the right is not a butterfly, it is the paradise bird, which is the national bird of Papua New Guinea. It's a real bird and lives in Papua New Guinea. And now I'm going to let Shelli tell us a little bit about how the journey was made possible for us.
We're excited to share our trip, and I'm going to use the script because I don't want to go over long. So I can talk forever on this.
Use the microphone.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, I could go forever on this, so I'm sticking with this, and also I'm not very good at, like off the tip of my head. So we're excited to share these highlights and what God did to show his love for the Yamano people and for us as we went to visit Mary and Ben and what we saw him do. And first of all, for us to be able to go, God provided the impossible finances each step of the way leading up to the realization of the trip. And then he provided the means for bringing both the needed and desired gifts to the Grimms and the Yamano people through our family and friends in this church, through prayer and through finances and the fundraiser. We thank you all that were praying with us, especially through prayer. The Lord also calmed our anxieties and those of our daughter Jessica. Some of you know of our daughter. She was really struggling with anxiety before the trip. He also calmed our concerns about our health, our acknowledged health problems, and also about regulations concerning our luggage contents and weight, which seemed like an ever-moving target the whole time we were trying to get ready, up to the very last day. He also gave us favor with airline check-in staff and security and visa and customs personnel. We had no major illnesses or injuries, and not even our normal knee and back pains. Thank you again for your prayers, because that was utterly an answer to prayers. Even before our travels, God showed us through the message that Pastor Zach gave about being our good shepherd, and that was the picture he gave us, he gave me for the whole trip. He was our good shepherd. We ended up being able to bring 3 70-pound bags with myriad items that the Grimms can't get in PNG, like, for example, an old-fashioned wash wringer and scrub board for cleaning clothes by hand, a large Dutch oven, steel knives, and so on, and also the 5 laptops for the literacy teams. We did end up having to ship the 200 Kalumi Minis, the audio Bible players, which he provided through the donations for that fundraiser. They did make it to WeWac from China, and we'll talk about that.
The next question I usually get when we tell people we went to Papua New Guinea is, where exactly is Papua New Guinea? And so this is kind of a big picture. We can see up in the right-hand corner is the United States. And we flew from there to Hawaii, and from Hawaii to Sydney, Australia, which is in the New South Wales area of Australia, and then from there to Brisbane. And you can see there, Papua New Guinea is just above Australia and below the Philippines and east of Indonesia. We flew into Port Moresby, which is the one and only international airport in Papua New Guinea. By the way, you can see that Papua New Guinea is actually divided into 2 nations, Papua and Papua New Guinea. We flew into Port Moresby, and from there we flew to Wewak, which you can see on the very northern coast of Papua New Guinea, and from there we made our way into the interior. As Shelli was was saying we were very much counting on the Lord to help us. And so on our morning, I'm going to start, because most of you have probably been to Hawaii, I'm going to start with talking about our journey. And one really major thing we saw God do on this, one of the many things we saw God do on this journey. On the morning of the 17th, we were in Sydney, Australia at 4 a.m. in the morning in the airport, because we had a flight out. We had all our bags. We were concerned that they weren't going to be able to take all our stuff. And so we were there extra early and had all our stuff. And we'd been praying that God would give us favor with the people we meet and provide a way. And soon we were joined by this man and his wife and son. And it turns out he's from Papua New Guinea. We got to talking, as you do. And he was asking what we were doing. We talked about our trip, and I asked him a little bit about him and what he does. And he said, "So I work in the Solicitor General's office in Port Moresby." And I said, "Oh, you're a lawyer?" He said, "Yeah, I'm a lawyer. I do, legal work for the government and that kind of stuff." And I said, "Oh, great." And they were very nice, and we chatted with him. He says, "Well, if we run into each other in Port Moresby, and if I can help you guys out in any way, maybe that'll work out," and we hope so. And then by then they had opened, and we got checked in, and I remember Shelli saying that was a God thing. That was a God thing that we met him. But we still had to go to Brisbane, and then on to Port Moresby. And when we went to Brisbane, our flight was delayed a little bit, and so we had a very close turnaround window in Port Moresby to go to Wewak, so we were getting concerned that our time was getting eaten up by going there. But we finally did get out of Brisbane and on to Port Moresby, and this was our first look at Papua New Guinea when we were coming into land. And we started to run into our own challenges here as we got into Papua New Guinea. I'll let Shelli tell you a little bit about that.
Okay, stepping off the plane in Port Moresby was like stepping into Jumanji. The heat and the humidity and the foreignness were just, all of a sudden really hit us. Our flight from, like Bruce had mentioned, had been delayed, so we were a little bit concerned that the domestic flight terminal was in a separate location. We had to get to a separate place, and the PNG customer service was not interested in our problems. And that was not very comforting, but we kept praying and putting it in God's hands, in our Good Shepherd's hands. So we went on to customs, and when we got there, we were delayed again, and we were almost denied entry into Papua New Guinea by a woman who seemed almost devil-possessed. She told us the Australian checkpoint visa people had lied to us and in allowing us entry, because her and her coworkers were miscounting the months that since our visas had been issued. They were counting from the month rather than the next, 1 month ahead. And she looked at me and leaned forward, in the booth, and she gleefully declared, "I deny you access into Papua New Guinea." And I stepped back and I looked at Bruce. He was next to me on being helped by the other coworker, and he goes. So we were praying, and so the coworker that was working with Bruce and another coworker that came up saw that we were having problems. They finally realized that we were telling the truth, that we were good until January 11th, and so we got the, "Okay, you can enter, but next time don't come so close to your visa expiration date." And that was what was thrown our way before we went to baggage claim. So we got to baggage claim, and I'm just showing you our bags again to remind you what we had. So in a thankful days, we walked over there, and we eventually found 2 of our 3 70-pound bags. And we waited till all the bags had been unloaded from our plane, but 2 of our bags were still missing. One of them was Bruce's carry-on bag. His bag had been too heavy, so we had to put his carry-on bag, which had all of his clothing, in it, which was a big deal because people in PNG are not his size. And we didn't have time, at Port Moresby to pick up more clothes. So anyway, that was a little edgy there. We couldn't be sure someone hadn't just stolen it because that's pretty common. But we still could hope and pray, which we did keep doing. And while Bruce was filling in the missing bag report, I started looking around, and eventually on the other side of the carousel, I saw 2 bags that were pulled apart, and nobody was by them at that point. So I went over there, and sure enough, one of them was Bruce's bag, his clothing bag, but the other one was another woman who was also frantically looking for her luggage. So we brought her suitcase over to her. The 70-pound bag was delayed because it was overweight. They kept it back. They had sent a bunch of other stuff that was overweight from another flight the day before. And so ours got bumped from this flight. And they said they'd send it on to Port Moresby the next day. We said, well, hopefully we won't be in Port Moresby. They said, okay, we'll send it to Wewak. So they did. And that did end up actually being a backwards blessing that we didn't have to carry that one extra 70-pound bag with us into the bush. So that did end up being a blessing. So we eventually got through customs, and we were almost certain we had probably missed our flight, or we were right on the edge, and we headed for the other terminal.
Remember this guy? So as we got out of the terminal, we had to walk about a quarter of a mile from the international terminal to the domestic terminal. And on the way, we meet this man, and he says, "Oh, hey, you guys finally made it through." And he had sent his family home and waited for us. And so he found us, and I said, "Well, yeah, I think, but now we think we've missed our flight. It's probably already gone." And he says, "No," he says, I think it might just be delayed. Here, let me help you. And he has a police van and 2 policeman bodyguards. He says, these guys will help you. And so they take all our bags and they load it into the van, and they drives us over to the international terminal. And we're going through and so they take all our bags off. We're hustling through. You have to go through, put your stuff through the X-ray machine, and he's flashing his ID around and said, they're okay. He's pushing it on through, and we get through there, and he goes up to, in the domestic terminal, it's really like stepping into another world. There's no seats, there's no fans, there's no air conditioning, there's people just sat all over the floor and stuff, and they really have no idea what's going on. But but there are counters up there, and he just hustles us up to the front of the counter. He says, these people need to get on the flight to Wewak, and this is where you check in bags, and he's flashing his ID, and they're okay. And the guy's going, all right, and he's putting things on our bags, and they take our bags off, and he goes, okay. And he says, now you guys just need to go through here, and you go around, and then you'll be in the departure terminal, and then you're good to go. He says, so here's where I leave you. And I said, who are you? And he told me his name. He says, I'm Tavasa. He says, some people call me Tavasa Tanuvasa. And I said, well, thank you so much. I told him my name. And from there, we haven't seen him again. He left, and we went through the door that he told us to go through.
Okay, so after Tuivasa left us, we continued through the second security checkpoint and then entered a huge waiting area. And it was just like before. People were sitting everywhere on the ground. There weren't any chairs. There's no announcements saying when flights are leaving or coming. There's no board that says when people are coming and going. It's just like, what? What do we do? So we there was a line, and we went to the very other end of the building where it looked like there was a desk at the other end. So we just walked through there, and we said, okay, I know we're not in line, but we just want to know if we missed our flight or not. Is our flight to Wewak still here? And they said, oh, your flight was delayed. We're just getting ready to announce that it's ready for boarding. So you just go through this door to your right and then over to the left and then get on your plane. Okay. They took our boarding passes and we got on the plane. So that was another of God's mercies.
I would like to say on all the plane flights we took, that was the only one that was delayed, thankfully. On purpose, yes. So we made our flight to Wewak thanks to Tavasa, And on our way, we flew for the first time over the Sepik River, which is, we would travel up this river to the village where Mary and Ben live. And so this was a picture I took from the plane. And this is the airport at Wewak, which is probably not much bigger than an AM/PM. So we landed here, and after getting through our sport, we saw Mary there, and she was happy to see us, and we had a reunion, and of course, a sweet reunion and a sweaty reunion, as the weather is so bad. And it was Mary's friend Carol who helped Mary and Ben, or who helped Mary. Carol is the owner of our manager of several Christian bookstores in Papua New Guinea, and she's the owner of the guest house that we were staying at in Papua New Guinea. And we told her the story, we told Mary and Carol the story of meeting Tavasa and what happened. And Carol was interested in that. She's from Kenya. And so she's looking it up on the internet, Tavasa Tuavasa, because she said, I wonder who this guy is. So we found out that Tavasa does not just work in the Solicitor General's office, he is the Solicitor General for Papua New Guinea. He runs the PNG Prime Minister's legal team. This is him, and this is him meeting the U.S. ambassador in Papua New Guinea. So God had put him in his path to help us, and he did help us, even though we didn't learn his name until right after we made the flight. This is where we stayed at in Papua New Guinea. This is the guest house, which is beautiful and had clean water, and it was nice to stay here. Didn't have electricity most of the time, but that's okay. And you'll see in that picture up on the top right, somebody had gifted Mary a couscous, which is, if you think of an opossum, only cuter. And had given her to give to the kids as a pet, and also said that they are delicious. So if the whole pet thing doesn't work out, you've got that. All right, we stayed in Wewak for about a day and a half, and then we had to travel by a bus from Wewak in the top right there to Moprik, which is in the top left there. Google says it should take 3 hours and 17 minutes to get from Wewak to Pagui, but Google is incorrect. It takes about 5 hours to go to Moprik in the PMV, that stands for private motorized vehicle, that we were going in, and we went in a vehicle load of about 25 people altogether. With that, that's us in the very back seat. And they were happy to have us. There was a little bit of they lowered the price from 30 kina to 25 kina for Christmas. So that was, and everybody said thank you. So that was about $8 to travel from Wewak to Moprik. And then from Moprik, we traveled by another vehicle that had some glass in the front. About 2.5 hours on a road that's more pothole than road. And at least on this one, we got to sit up front. That vehicle in front of us is typical of transport going in that area. And so there we were. We made it to Pagui, and we stayed the night at this lovely guest house here. And that was the only place where I actually saw a paradise bird, which was hanging from a string in the doorway going into where the rooms are in the guest house. And this was our room with our mosquito netting there at Pagui. In the morning, we got ready. That's Mary's boat there, getting the motor ready to go, and those are all long canoes that we had to step over to get into the boat. We drew a big crowd because they wanted to see us trip and getting into the canoes and out and stuff. So this is getting on to the Sepik River. The Sepik River is a huge river. It's like the Amazon. Some people call it the second Amazon. And so Mary has a guide from the village helping her as she's driving, and he's up front to help us to look out for logs and other debris that's in the river. because it's at flood stage and all kinds of things are falling into the river. So he's there to help tell her where to steer, and he uses that paddle he's got there to kind of push logs off. And there's all kinds of amazing vegetation and birds along the way. This is a closer up picture of the picture before, but you can see the giant heron in that picture. In the lower left, there's a heron and a parrot on both of those pictures. Unfortunately, my cell phone camera is not good enough to get really good pictures of that, but it was an amazing ride. We stopped for briefly at Ambunti, which is about 4 hours up the river. And Mary had to pick up a package from another missionaries. That's Doug and Sandy. Doug is 6'8". And he came and he said hello, and he says, there comes a time in every man's life when you're going to have to look up to another man. And I said, today's my day. Of course, I get to do that with Dan all the time, but nevertheless, it was impressive. He's a tall man, and they're lovely people, and we were happy to meet them. And
Okay, the greeting in Baku. After 2 interesting but exhausting days of travel, we reached Baku, the village that Mary and Ben and their family call home. And you can't see the village from the river. We had to go behind all the 20-foot grasses to get there. Mary had to steer the boat, it was kind of an estuary, and then you could see the village back there. She had to cut the motor so that they could pull through the motor couldn't take all of that grass. So anyway, we got to the mooring area, and Mary had messaged ahead that we were coming, so there were a whole bunch of people to meet us, including Joya and Adira. And Adira didn't know that we were coming. Joya had picked up on it, but Adira didn't, and her face, the way it lit up when she saw us, was worth the whole trip. It was really sweet. And after we were carefully helped off the boats, they put cut leaf leis and beelums on us, the handmade tote bags, which are gifts that are an ancient Papua New Guinea tradition. They are placed around our necks. Flower and leaf confetti was tossed in the air to land on us, and depending on the person greeting us, we received warm handshakes or affectionate hugs or strokes or pats on our face, or nose rubs like Eskimos, or kisses on the cheek. And they are all accompanied by the greeting siok. And this is an all-purpose greeting, which means in Yamano, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, thank you, and you're welcome. So, yeah, so it's similar to aloha or shalom. Yeah, so various people walked us, and you can go ahead and show this. Various people walked us part of the way up the long ascent to the Grimm's place. The Grimm's compound was at the top of the village, and then for us it was a pretty daunting trek. As we were guided up the hill, more and more people came out of their homes that were along the way to greet us. And besides the women presenting beelums to us, a few of the men also presented some wood carvings that they had made and painted ahead of time for this occasion. Some of the people had made decorative grass curtains. They had hung flowers from some of them, and that we would walk through as we went up the hill at various places. They also decorated our house where we ate meals, the kwombar, and our guest house with those. And we found out that later that the linguistics team had been mainly responsible for all those decorations. And a couple from the Baku linguistic team walked us all the way from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill. So anyway,
we passed by the church. This is where they meet, which has a nice dry area because it rains almost every day there. I think it rained every day that we were there. And so this is a nice dry area for them to meet. And we also stopped at the Kwambor of, a Kwambor is kind of like an open wind house where everybody sits, and if you're going to gather with neighbors, you're going to do it in your Kwambor. And they gave us some fresh green coconut milk, which is about the best stuff you can do when you're dehydrated and physically exhausted. And that's where I received the first carving that we got, which I got this one, which is the praying mantis. And Shelli was also given this one, which is the sea eagle. He's catching a fish there too at that point. We were pretty bush there, and they were pretty worried about us. But fortunately, we were able to continue after a little while. We were not greeted with the traditional sing-sing. A sing-sing is kind of the way that they would normally greet people in full custom costume, cultural costume and stuff. This happened, they didn't do that because and they would normally sing and dance us to the top of the village where we were going. They did not do that this time because they had in the previous week, they had 2 deaths in their village, and so they were in mourning, and they felt it would not be appropriate to be doing that while they're in mourning. As it turned out, the Quambor where we met and had the coconut water was owned by the man whose wife had most recently passed away. So it was very kind of him to allow us to gather there, and we expressed our sorrow for his loss, and he was grateful for that. So it was nice to get a chance to also to mourn with them a little bit as well. So this is more what a sing-sing would happen. This happened the previous week in another important event that was going on in the village, which we'll talk a little bit about later. So for now, we'll leave that as it is, but that's kind of more the traditional greeting. On the way, we passed by proof of the crocodiles for which the Sepik River is so famous. Kind of put myself in that picture to give it scale, and also you can see inside the croc's mouth is another croc. In the Yamano language, crocodiles are called mungors. So now we keep going, and we feel like we're almost there, right? That one cross, that little gate over there, that has to be close to the end, right? Not even close. So we continue on up, and we finally arrived at the sleeping house for Mary and Ben, which is on the left there. And we would go just a little bit up the hill to meet at this is where we would stay, which is their guest house. And
so I'm getting to spend time with Mary and Ben and our grandkids, Joya, Adira, Isaac, and Judah. Where they live and do life was literally awesome. It made our hearts happy to meet Judah in person for the first time. He would blow us kisses on the internet, but that's just not the same. They were super hosts, especially Mary, who made sure that our time there was as pleasant as possible. And God, it was truly a blessing that we were provided the opportunity, that God made that possible for us to visit them in Papua New Guinea.
Just wanted to talk a little bit about life in Baku. As we said at the beginning, it's beautiful and brutal. If this is your view doing the dishes, that's a pretty good view. If I were to make it really authentic, we would close all the doors and windows, we would turn the heat up to about 90, and we would spray mist in here until we got to about 85% humidity. And then you would have kind of the feel of what that's like. But it is absolutely gorgeous. And I wanted to just mention a few things about life in Baku and in PNG. First off is the insects are absolutely huge. That's Mary with a grasshopper. That spider is about that big. And the butterfly, which Mary took the picture of the butterfly, is about 5 to 6 inches across. We were not allowed to kill the spiders. Mary says, do not kill the spiders. They are our ally. They eat the mosquitoes, and it's more important to eat the mosquitoes, and the spiders won't hurt you. So and the flies. So that took some getting used to, but we did. The flowers are gorgeous. It's hibiscus, and the one on the right is pineapple. The pineapple flower, the one in the middle, I don't know what that's called, but it's beautiful. And here's some more of the flowers that we saw there. And that's a leaf that Joya is holding from the breadfruit tree. They're just phenomenally huge. again, this is just part of the view. You can see that palm in the back with the huge leaves in the front, and then the general view from the area where we were staying up in Baku. And the fruit is amazing. Somebody came and brought us that pineapple. That pineapple's bigger than my head. And it's so juicy and delicious. You know how here when we eat pineapple, we cut out the core and we throw it away. It gets so ripe and delicious there that the core is the best part. It's amazing. And so all kinds of papayas and mangoes and more kinds of bananas than you've ever heard of, including some that taste like cinnamon and some that when you cook them taste just like mashed potatoes. So it was amazing stuff. This is the inside of where we stayed. And we had a solar-powered fan. We had a thing we put out during the day to charge it up, and it would run most of the night and make it almost possible to sleep. And we had also a solar-powered light that we could use when we had to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And we got used to getting up and down off the ground. So for people over 60, that's a fun challenge. But we found that you got used to it the more you did it. So I thought maybe that should be like an exercise I do all the time. Just get up and down off the ground, get up and down off the ground. I drew this up, this really rough drawing. It's kind of of Mary and Ben's compound where they live. On the right there is Mary and Ben's sleeping house. Next, over to the left is the cookhouse. It's called the Awas Nemba Aka. Everything, the name for a house is called an Aka. Awas is food, Nemba is make, so it's literally the food-making house. Behind that is the shower, and up on the left there is the guest house where we were sleeping. That's all uphill. There's a garden, and then all the way over on the left, that little one is called the Akayaper, which is the bad house, which is the outhouse. It's also the same word they use for jail. But that Akayaper was much better than the one that we were using at the guest house in Pagui where we stayed, so it wasn't too bad. Below that is the Kombor, the wind house, and their chicken coop, and you can kind of see at the bottom they had more garden and more clothesline. This is kind of a typical setup for people's homes in the village. They kind of separate their areas. You would never go into somebody's sleeping house in the village, or you'd be invited into the Kombor, and that's where you'd meet people. This, if you want to get an idea of what it's like here, this is a little video, so if we can all be from the guest house. This is a view, a panoramic view of our from where we were staying, and so if we're real quiet, you can kind of hear what it sounded like too. Well, it wasn't as loud as I had hoped it would be. There's what they call a cuckoo bird in the background there. But anyway, you get an idea of kind of what it was like being there. And again, the view is beautiful. Almost every evening, the rains came in. You can see the Sepik River in the background. Also, while we were there, we met Toby, who is, when you go to the Yamano, when you live in the Yamano villages, you're adopted by a family. And Toby's family adopted Mary, and so he treats her as he treats his own daughter. And he gave me this carving right here. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about it because in our culture, we look at something where people are sticking their tongue out and we think it's kind of silly and clownish. But that's kind of not how they look at it. For them, in Pacific Island cultures, the tongue out is the face of ferocity. If you've ever seen a Maori haka, you kind of understand what that is. And I have just a short video to kind of give you the experience of how they view that warrior face. just give you a little different cultural perspective of what that face means in their culture. While we were there, several of the literacy teams came to visit us. This is the literacy team from Yasan. And the man in the red there is Isidore. And Isidore gave me that carving there, this is the one I showed last week. And he actually wanted to tell me about this himself. So this is a culturally significant image to them. This is the eagle lifting a boar, and he carved it with the face of a man. If we think about the kind of the saying we have, when pigs fly, pigs can't fly, right? And so an eagle lifting a boar up to see things and do things that they couldn't possibly do on their own is the meaning of that image. And for him, it was very emotional. And up until this point, I don't think we really understood how important the literacy work for them is. And he wanted to let us know. And he was about in tears when he was telling me about this, is that, he never, to be able to teach their own children to read their own language was an amazing thing for them. And it was, for him to participate in that, is he never imagined in his life that he would get to contribute to his people in this way. And so he was very, very touched by this. And so he told me that the boar is the Yamano people, and that the eagle is Mary, for coming and leading the literacy group and teaching them to teach their own children, to lifting them up to something that they could not possibly think of doing themselves prior to that. And he put a man's face on it because he wanted that to mean me, that I would raise such a daughter who would go and do such a thing. Again, we received a visit. This is a member of the Kambawe literacy team. His name is Henry. And this is, again, something that was helped us to really understand the significance of what Mary and Ben are doing there and what our visit meant to them. Henry and his wife had their first child while we were visiting. And he wanted us to name their child, which is, that's a pretty strange. In our culture, we would never think of that, hey, you guys had a baby? Why don't you let me name it, right? But for them, it is culturally something that they do, that they ask somebody who's significant in their lives at the time their child is born to give the child their name. And so we did, and I chose a biblical name that is significant to us and meaningful to me, which is Boaz, because I see Boaz as the kinsman redeemer and the beautiful part he plays in the biblical story. And Mary was able to relay that to him, and he was so happy to have that name. And he says, I can't wait for him to grow up so I can explain to him the meaning of his name.
Okay, so the literacy program, well, first of all, it was a real honor to meet each of the people that came up to visit us at in Baku. That they had to travel sometimes 3 hours to come to visit us, and some paddled downstream by a canoe. One came by canoe, others came overland. But that all by itself emphasized for us, they came to classes for 8 weeks in order to learn how to teach their children to read and write. That was an amazing commitment for these people who live off the land. They farm and they garden and they have other things in their lives to live, and to see them, just to survive. And they came up and they spent 8 weeks doing this course, and came up to Baku to do this course. Because, you can go ahead and do the next one. Because Yamano is a unique language, they have to create their own reading materials for their young students. And this was one of the main purposes for the laptops. They had a preloaded software that Mary had given, told us what they wanted, and we put those on those laptops to help make books so they could illustrate and make the, match the words with the stories and help the little kids learn how to read. Yes, so, and then I wanted to say that they're also supposed to be starting this month with their literacy teams, teaching the children. This is the month that they're supposed to start. So this is the Yesen literacy team, and they hiked about 3 hours overland to come see us. And then the next one. This is the Kambawi. That's the one that Henry belonged to, and they also came, I believe, overland to come visit. And then Kauye, Titus is the one that came down. His whole team didn't come down because they are also in mourning, but he wanted to come down to meet us. Yeah, he came down. It took him about 3 hours to paddle down to come and see us. Okay. Okay, and then this is the Moyo literacy team. This is, I think, the village next to them downriver. And then the next one is the Baku literacy team. And and Jesse is the one on the top left. He is, we'll talk some more about Jesse.
So they had just had their graduation ceremony the week before we arrived, and this is they did the Sing Sing for their graduation ceremony, which was a big deal in all 5 of their communities. You can see they went all out for the graduation, and I know that some from the literacy team said that they received better instruction and training through the courses that Mary gave them than they had ever had going to any of the schools they went to growing up. So they were really, really thankful for what they were able to accomplish there. And when people are thankful in the Yamano tribe, they give you bilums. And that's part of the thank yous. They present you with bilums. So you can see Mary is loaded down with bilums. Yes. Next to her is Clements. Clements is kind of the visionary amongst the Yamano people. He is the one who first connected with Mary while she was still doing her master's degree before she in Canada. And he had, in his life, he had traveled briefly to England and had traveled out to the very rural villages and saw that even in the very rural villages, they had electricity, they had water, they had food, they had these things. And he said, we can have some of these things where we live. He was doing some pastor training, and so he has this vision of trying to develop those things for his community. And when he connected with Mary, he had been trying. They had done a translation of the New Testament in the 70s had been completed, and he had been trying for years to do on his own a translation of the Old Testament, not really getting anywhere. So part of what he asked Mary and Ben to do when they come out was to do a translation of the Old Testament. That, of course, evolved into the literacy program because there's no point in doing a translation in your native language if nobody can read it. So he is really the visionary behind the getting Mary and Ben out there and trying to help his community. And you can see there, that's Isaac, and he has the that carving that Isidore wanted to give me personally. What's that? Yeah, he lives just down the hill from Mary too. And here's Shelli wanted to tell you about some of the people here.
So we kind of fell in love with the people. Jesse, he's in this picture on the one with the little girl there in the middle, Teresa. He is the person that Mary had been training to be the manager and coordinator of the literacy teams. And he had done an excellent job despite having lost his wife in April of 2023 And not only had he and his wife had adopted a little girl, Teresa, and the village had said after she passed away, they said that someone else should raise that little girl. But he said, no, I'm the only dad this little girl knows, and he refused to give her up. And she is his little shadow, and she loves her daddy. And so, anyway, that was Jesse. And then his son, Stuart, he was a really hardworking young man. He's helped the Grimms complete several projects, and he completed several while we were there. He's trying to earn money to working for them to finish his high school. There, they have to pay for their room and board, and they usually have to go out to another village to go to high school. So they were trying to help him with that. So meeting both Jesse and Stuart was kind of like meeting family. These are people that spend a lot of time with the Grimms. We were really blessed to get to meet all these people who were so much a part of their lives that we heard mentioned, And another person was Easton. Easton is deaf and mute. He became deaf when he was a child, but he was really a good communicator. Through gestures and vocal noises he would make, he would communicate with us, and he loved to hang around with the Grimms. He'd come and he'd look at their picture books, and they would use those sometimes to communicate. He had communicated to Mary that he's a believer. Him and his mom are believers, and he loved to look at a graphic novel version of the Bible that they had. I think they had given it to him, but whenever he was around, that Bible was around. And before we left, from looking at our cell phones, he knew more than anybody else about us, than anyone else in the village, the man who couldn't hear. Then there was also Matthew. He's in the yellow shirt there. He was the worship leader for the church services. He was also one of the main construction crew leaders for various Yomano projects, the water project that they did and others. We brought him a couple of books on building and house construction, and he just loved that. He came up a few times just to visit. I think he knew some English, and he came up quite a bit while we were there. And then Panina, she was on the literacy team, the lady that's by Mary there. She came up at one point, a busy mom. She has lots of kids, and she brought us coconut and visited for a while. She took a lot of interest in us, and when we were heading back out, she was all worried, that we were going to slide down the hill or get hurt. And we said, "Don't worry, just pray." I said, "I can understand this worry, but don't worry for us. Just pray." Okay, so I think then. Right, spending Christmas in Papua New Guinea with Mary and Ben and the Grimlings was really sweet. We got to participate in some of their Advent candle lightings and singings and readings. We had other adventures celebrating Christ's birth with them, including the nativity scene, the ever-evolving nativity scene that was handcrafted, some from clay and some from other interesting materials, wood and different things. We finally got to see this in person. We gotten to see that just on video chat in the past. Okay, and, this is Adira getting ready for church. That's one of the things we got to go to church with them. And then the next pictures, this is their dog went too. Mango. So the two existing churches in the village united on the one Sunday that we were there for the Christmas Eve service. It was they invited Bruce to speak, and Mary had kind of hinted before our trip that they might invite him to speak while he was there. And as sincerely and urgently as Bruce wanted to be prepared in advance, God did not give him what to share until the very last minute. So Bruce talked a little bit about that and waiting on the Lord, and the Lord did give him a word, and it was he amplified the parable of the Good Samaritan, which was it was a very I think the Spirit led him through his teaching, and he was able to share Also, the prayer that we've been praying for a long time, that Mary and Ben would be a light in their village, that their believers would be a light in Baku village. Baku village would be a light to the Yamano people, and the Yamano people would be a light in Papua New Guinea, and Papua New Guinea a light to the world. And we were able to share our prayer for them, that they would be a light. And we'll talk about later some of the darkness that this is hopefully addressing. Afterward, we were invited back for Christmas Day service, and the officiating pastor shared a short message, and then different people offered, songs and things that our family got to sing with the Grimms, Joy to the World, for them. Then afterward, the people wanted to gift us, as well as those who had donated, to bring all the things that were coming, the laptops, and they knew that the Kalumi minis were coming, the audio Bible players. And so they wanted to gift us some Belams to bring back also to the people who donated. And then also at that time, Bruce got to record a message from them back to the church, which he played when we were announcing this. Then we had, this is the kids dancing to the music. They do that there too. They did it at our church when they were here. So we had photo ventures on the way home, trying to catch everybody before, while they were all dressed in nice clothes. And this was the only picture we got of everybody, but as you can see, some heads were cut off. So, yeah, Toby's wife, Rosalind, didn't know how to work the camera. And then the next one, I think this is one we took of the Grimms in front of, that's their home. You can see the solar panel behind Mary there. That's how they power their electronics.
So one more thing about Christmas is Christmas dinner. Not the grasshopper, but if you look over in the left-hand corner, you'll see a rooster. At the graduation ceremony, somebody, in addition to the Belams that they gave her, thanking her for the work that she was doing, they gave her a rooster that they wanted to have for Christmas dinner. So we chased that rooster around pretty much half the day, trying to catch him because he knew what was up. And they finally caught him, and Stuart and Mary plucked him and cleaned him and got him ready for Christmas dinner. And so we had rooster for Christmas dinner. And this is something I'm particularly proud of, is we made bush apple pie. We had a can of canned apples and hardly any of the stuff that I love making pies, stuff that we would make. But between Mary and I made a beautiful pie on an open flame, an open Dutch oven. And I thought it was going to come out pretty much like applesauce. But when we cut it out and pulled it out, it was beautiful. And anyway, I was really proud of that pie, and so was Mary, as you can see. And one other gift what we brought to Ben was a kilt from his parents, who sent that to him. Not necessarily terribly practical in a 100% wool kilt in Papua New Guinea, but he was very happy to have it, enthusiastic to get that, honoring his family heritage. That's his family's tartan. So the tartan is kind of interesting because it's much like, it's something that you can explain to the people in Papua New Guinea. This is much like a tartan. This is a specific pattern that's made by the Yamano people, and only the Yamano people. And there are other, this one is from Ma Creek, which is upriver. And so there are different patterns done by different villages. And if you're walking around town, and by the way, walking around town, men wear these as well as women, and all different kinds of colors and stuff, but it's ubiquitous and everybody uses them, and everybody knows what tribe you're from or who's looking after you. And this began our long journey home. I only included this rather unflattering picture of myself because somebody had given me a stick to walk down the steep hill, and it rained every night, so it was muddy and slippery and hard to do. And you'll see, I'll relate to that later. But on the way down, we stopped at the learning center that Mary and Ben and the building team there have built since they've been there. This is where they did the training for the literacy team. And on the right is the beginnings of a dormitory that they are hoping to build there. Those are all metal pipes, so the termites don't eat them, metal posts. And so this is kind of their hope for the future there, and we hope to see that coming up in the future. We got down to the river and saw that women coming back from fishing had been successful and caught piranha. So those are piranha there on the left. And that is us on the way out of there. And again, it had rained more since we had been there. Our first stop was to get fuel. Almost all along the river, all the villages along the river sell fuel. They either sell it by the barrel or they have just big plastic bags of it. And I'm not sure how you get that into your tank, but yeah, there's a barrel on the porch there, right? And more proof of the giant crocodiles that live in the area. We never saw a live one while we were there, but we did see proof that they are there. And this was visiting. We stopped by Yesen on the way, and I showed you that picture of me with the stick before, because when Isidore saw that, he said, when you come to visit us on your way out, he says, I will make you a proper walking stick. And so Isidore stayed up all night the night before we arrived. He made me this one over here, and he made this one for Shelli, which I think is just beautiful. This is a heron, and it's beautiful. And he stayed up all night making that for us. And anyway, that was a really special thing for us, that he wanted us to take that with us. And we also stopped in the one Moyo village, which is the one literacy, this is their literacy team, and the one group that wasn't able to make it up to see us while we were there, but you can see they're throwing flowers and confetti on us and, thanking us for having come and stuff we brought. I wanted to say one more thing about this picture. My favorite part is the kid in the back with the bush knife. That is very common in the culture there. Boys start using a machete when they're very young. And it was really something to see our little 3-year-old Isaac whacking around with a machete up. It's a little bit terrifying, but that's kind of how they do it there. The boys are raised with those, and you can kind of see he's looking at us with a little skepticism there, but it was fun to go see them. On our way back, Mary had arranged, we only had to go up the river a couple hours to Ambunti, where Mary had arranged for us to get a ride with MAF, Mission Aviation Fellowship, that has a landing strip there. Unfortunately, there was a little mix-up in the scheduling, and so we ended up spending the night. It was kind of nice to spend the night at PIM Ministries, where Doug and Sandy work. They have a guest house there that we stayed in, and it rained like I've never seen before, all night long, just torrential sheets of rain, and we were concerned that we wouldn't be able to, that the pilot wouldn't be able to take off or land on the grass runway that we were going on, but the pilot showed up. He was able to land, and we all got loaded on, and he turned around and said, "Shall we pray?" And we said, "Thank you." And so he prayed for us, and all went well. You can kind of, on the right, you can kind of see the grass runway where we took off there. And over the Sepik River. Oh, yeah. Oh, up on the top of that picture, too, is the PIM, the Pacific Island Ministries. That's the ministry of Doug and Sandy, and that's where we stayed the night before. And this is a view of Wewak as we're heading into Wewak. You can kind of see that little peninsula sticking out there is Wewak, and we were flying back to Wewak. This is, we spent about a day and a half in Wewak, and I just wanted to talk about a couple of things while we saw there. The woman on the left that we saw when we were out for a walk, and she is creating one of the belums. That's what she's working on. And she's also displaying how the women there use the bilums, which is they carry them across their head like that when they have them filled with groceries and supplies and that sort of thing, and that's how they work with them. And anyway, I thought she was a beautiful example of how that works. All women in PNG learn to make bilums. It's cross-cultural. It's not just with the Yamano. There are over 800 languages, therefore at least 800 tribes in Papua New Guinea, and they all make bilums and give them as gifts. The woman on the right is at the open air market there, which Mary went to several times. We went to a couple of times. These people come in from all over the surrounding villages and towns. They grow these things in their own gardens and bring them to sell. And for many of them, they hope that they can sell those things so they can buy a little protein for their own family. So there's bananas and greens. We ate more kinds of greens, and some of them I couldn't even identify, but they were all pretty yummy. And she's got peanuts there and all kinds of other stuff. And they also, this is just an aerial view of where we stayed in Wewak. The little red circle is where the guest house was, and the open square area there is where all the buses met to take people to other places. And right at the very top where it says Chem Care Pharmacy is the area of where the Christian bookstore that Carol owned was managed, yeah. And this is just a little short video of what life is like in Wewak. It's just about a minute long. And the only difference between this and our experience is that while we were there, instead of this kind of music playing, we were hearing "It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas," which was a little unusual. So this is all happening right by where we stay, actually, as you'll see in a minute. So that's people in buses getting ready to go places. Now you can see the Christian bookstore there. That's the bookstore there that Carol manages. This is a pretty typical scene there. You see the man with the bilam hanging around his neck. One of the differences there is we would see people chewing buai when we were there, which is betel nut. It's a stimulant, and they spit and it looks on the ground like red paint. This is looking from the Christian bookstore across the street to the supermarket, to the indoor supermarket. There's just a couple more minutes left, or a couple of seconds. And this is actually directly across the street from the guest house where we stayed. And they would set up and sell things off of that table there. This is our last day. We were heading out. This is at the airport in Wewak. You can tell we've got shoes on again. Mary, of course, is barefoot. And we still have a bunch of long flights ahead of us. And we would leave there early in the morning on Christmas Eve, and we would arrive in Los Angeles many, 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 many hours later, but it would still be Christmas Eve at 5:30. And God would work one or two small miracles for us. We had hoped to be able to thank Talvasa, the man who helped us on the way to PNG, but nowhere could we find an address or any place to send him anything. We wanted to send him a thank you. We had brought a couple of copies of the book that Shelli had written, and both Shelli and I and Mary had written in it our thanks and wanted to send it to him. When we arrived at Port Moresby, a woman with her grandson got in line behind us, and as we started to chat, it turns out that she works at the federal courthouse in Port Moresby and works with Talvasa just about every day. And so she was able to give us his address, which we relayed to Mary, and so that was a little thing that God gave us to be able to send that thank you to him. The last little miracle happened when we arrived in Los Angeles. These walking sticks that Isidore made for us, because he just finished them the night before, they had no finish on them at all, no sealer, no anything at all. And we weren't sure that they would allow us to have them in the United States. We got in and we got through customs, and the man said, "Is there anything that you have to declare?" And Mary had told us, whenever they ask you that, just tell them yes, everything, and tell them everything and be honest, because it'll go better for you if you're honest than if you don't know or you're even trying to hide something. Just be honest and say yes. So but I didn't know. I said, what kinds of things? He says, well, alcohol, tobacco, unfinished wood products, and so yeah, darn. So we told him that we had these, and he said, "Are you sure they don't have like any finish on them at all?" And we said, "No, they don't." And he said, "Okay, well, somebody's going to have to come over and somebody's going to have to take a look at these." We actually didn't have them; they were in our checked baggage, so we had to get them out of the checked baggage area. And since they were going to be looking at our baggage, I thought I would tell them about these also, which are these are bone daggers, and these are very. I asked some. These are also given to us when we were given the Belams in the second church service. Several people gave us these. These are made from the femur of a cassowary bird, which is an ostrich-like bird. And I asked Clemens what they're used for, and he said they're used for killing people. They're very close combat. They would wear them in sleeves and things around their sleeves. And as they got into closer combat, they would reach for them and stab people. I did a little research on my own and found that they are made from the thigh bone of cassowary bird, and sometimes the thigh bone of a human being. They consider using the thigh bone of a warrior considers using the thigh bone of his own father to make a bone dagger like this. Something about having the power of his own father as a warrior, and also there is some debate as to which is harder, the cassowary bone or the human femur bone. So that's used. These are. You can come up and take a look at these afterwards, are carved. This one appears to be quite a bit older than the other ones, and quite possibly has been used for the purpose for which it was intended. So anyway, I told them about that we had those in the bag when we got to Los Angeles, and when they made us go over to the side, and we waited, and they sent a customs agent to us, and he took us, and we waited for our bags to come back, and we got them. We had one big bag, and then these two things wrapped in a big package because they wouldn't fit in the bag. And they took us off to a room by ourselves. They had an X-ray machine, and the man, we had told him about our trip and how we got these things, and he was very kind, and he said, "You know what, we're just going to run the big bag through the X-ray machine, but these sticks we're going to have to take a look at." So he didn't ask to see any of this stuff in person. He just asked to see these two sticks. So we ran everything through the X-ray machine, and another man was there, and he was inspecting these. And we showed him the picture, the one on the left here, about how we had gotten them, and he said, "Oh, there's no finish on them." He says, I'm sorry, these can't be allowed into the United States. They're, it's just a thing. They can't do that." And we said, "Oh, we're sorry." And Mary had brought me a carving of a mungor the last time she was here, and she said she didn't have any problems, and so we thought it was okay, and he asked some more questions about it. He wanted to see this picture, and he said, "No, it's just we can't do it." And we had thought about it and said, this isn't something. If God doesn't want us to have these things, this isn't vital for us. We had made up our minds we weren't going to argue with anybody over these things, and so we thought we would lose And he sat there and he got real quiet. And I wish I had a video as I watched God change his mind, because he just got very quiet for a minute, and he just kept muttering to himself, "No, we can't. Just this one time, I'm going to allow you guys to take these things with you." And he says, but if your daughter comes and she sends you anything else, he says, make sure you tell her it's got to be finished. And he handed us our passports, because he had our passports, and we were allowed to leave. And that was just a beautiful little miracle that God gave us so that we could have those things and those gifts from Isidore. The Kalumi Minis that we raised money for here in this congregation arrived the day we flew out. Mary sent us this picture with Judah guarding them, and we had over 200 Kalumi Minis in the with Bible stories in the Yamano language. And I wish we could have been there to distribute them, but they like I said, they arrived the day that we moved out. But Toby and his family, Toby and some others went, and Mary and Ben went to the villages and passed out the Kalumi Minis. And an amazing thing happened that when Toby was helping to pass them out and they turned them on for the first time, he realized that years before, when these recordings were made, he had either forgotten or didn't know it, that his uncle had made the recordings. And so when he turned it on, he heard his uncle's voice. And his uncle had since passed away. His uncle passed away before Mary and Ben ever got there. And so that was a very touching moment for him. And he was super excited about passing those out to the Yamano people. That's Jesse up front there helping to pass them out in the different villages. Mary and Ben were there distributing those out to the families, and they told us that as they left each village, they could hear just about every house, they could hear the Word of God in Yamano being played. Praise God, yes. Also afterwards, Jesse helped to organize and distribute the literacy materials that we sent, the laptops and the other materials that we brought for the different Yamano villages. There are 5 different villages. If you haven't caught on to that while we're there, there's Baku and Mayo and Kumbawe and Yesen and Kaye. And so these materials that you all helped us raise the funds for are making a difference in the Yamano community. So you can be praying for the Grimms if you've been watching the prayer chain. You know a little bit about what's been going on there since. If you know anything about that. Well, I'm going to just briefly say that there are people who have been, when someone dies, and somebody died in this case, it's not just to say, to mourn their death, but somebody they always feel like somebody has to be held responsible, that somebody is putting a spell on that person and causing their death. And they charge them with sorcery. And whether it's a true thing or not, so if you go to the funeral there and you don't mourn quite hard enough that they think that you're probably the one who cast the spell on their loved one and their loved one died. And someone will have a dream and say, oh, so-and-so, this is kind of like the Salem witch trials, right? Someone had a dream and said that this person did it. And in this case, they targeted a man who was a widower with 8 children. Well, 3 men altogether, and he was one, and they burned his house down, and they burned his neighbor's house down, which is actually the one with the first one you saw with the crocodile head. That was his neighbor, and that was his house. Burn it to the ground, chop down all their trees, kill all their animals, and would kill them if they could get a hold of them. They tortured the neighbor. He wasn't charged with sorcery, but they tortured him trying to get out the location of the person who they were charging. And Mary and Ben were harboring him at their house. And God hid that man and his children, his name is Silas, from the eyes of the people who would have killed him. And ultimately, corrupt police and somebody who's been kind of a corrupt influence in the Yamano villages came hunting for him and fortunately did not go away with him, but they agreed to take him down to Ambunte to the police station, and they would sort out whatever charges they were. And so, and Mary and Ben at that point said, if these people do not have a home in this community, then neither do we. And so they have pulled out their family to Wewak at this point, and they've left their home to Silas and his 8 children because they have no home, and they said, when Silas has a home, then we can come back to ours. And so that sort of thing was going on. They took him down to Ambunte, where they immediately took Silas into custody for sorcery charges. They were charging him with sorcery, and imprisoned him, and without a warrant or without actually even a charge. And Mary from Wewak was able to get a hold of the provincial commander and tell him what was going on. And you can kind of read the last little bit of, this is Mary's last communication. He says, I finally got to meet with the police provisional commander this morning, and Silas was released today at our 2 p.m. We are praising God and praying. Pray for Silas to grow strong and rooted in his faith. Pray for Jesse Awanal to make a decision to follow the Lord, even though it may mean bringing down the wrath of these evil men. Pray for Clements, Toby, and the other Baku believers to stand firm and have wisdom as we proceed through court cases and hearings. Please pray for those who are currently on the fence that will give their hearts to God and follow his way. Please pray for Alphonse, the man who was tortured, both for healing and for courage to testify truthfully in court. Please pray for Mr. Christopher Tamare, the police provincial commander, that he will have wisdom and clarity in regarding this case and the corruption in the Ambunte police station. May God's will be done. Thank you for praying with us.
And Mary shared with us that this 2 p.m. happened when we were in prayer on Wednesday night. Our prayer service started at their 1 o'clock, and he was released at 2 o'clock. That's why that was really encouraging to them that people here are praying for them. So after meeting all of these people, we couldn't help, like I said, but love them, and we will continue praying for them and ask you that you would continue to be praying for their literacy teams. They're looking for support for each team as they go on, that they'll be able to have people that will help support them so they can have supplies for their students and have, whatever they need that takes money. They can be able to get that, including like travel to go make copies of their books and making the copies of their books that they're creating. Just little details make a big difference there. Then also be praying that the people will be listening to and reading the Word of God as it becomes available on the Kalumi Minis, the Bible, audio Bibles, and then as they get the Bible, they have the New Testament. Be praying that they'll be reading that and that they will look forward to the Old Testament coming. And then also be praying for Clements, he's the head of the Yamano Association, and then Toby and other pastors and leaders in their community, that they will be able to stand during these times, and they'll be able to have God's strength and be a light to move other people into the light, and that God will be able to sweep the dark corners. These dark things have been happening for a long. They're traditional, and they are things I think we feel like God wants swept out of their villages. At this point is the turning point for the Yamano people. Pray that they would have this true strength and comfort in Jesus' presence. And Psalm 27, 70, and 71 are ones I keep praying in their behalf. And if you have other prayers or psalms with those, if you want to pray those with us, or pray whatever God leads you to pray. Mainly we're praying for repentance, forgiveness, reconciliation, and restoration. That they will rebuild Silas's house and Alphonse's house, and that there will be healing in this village. And the people who lost the loved one will also be comforted, and they will see that there's a different way, that grief doesn't have to lead to anger. It does sometimes lead to anger, but that anger it can be there's other ways to deal with that anger. And even God, I think He prefer we be angry at Him than do these kinds of things. Anyway, those are the things that we're praying.
So one other thing is they did send us, the people in Baku did gift us these belums that they wanted us to give to those who had helped to raise funds. They had donated to raise funds for the laptop computers, the Kalumi Minis, and the other supplies that we brought. And we've asked Dan and them to give us a list of the people that they know donated. If you are one of those people, we would love to present you with one of the belums that they left. So if you would like to come up afterwards and let us know, we would love to present that to you in the right way. You don't just hand it to somebody, you have to put it on their neck. We found this out. There was a big fight in church over the whole thing. Not a big fight, but there was a little bit of an oral argument about the right way to present a belum. So we would love to do that. Also, if you just want to come up and take a look at some of the things we brought back, that would be great too. All right, I think that's it. Thanks.